Yeah, she's notified us she's en route, so we'd like to start.
All right, let's do that. Very good. All right, Tani, we're going to start her up.
Great.
All right, good evening, everyone. It is Monday, February 6, 2023, a little after 5:30. I have 5:34 p.m., so we will get started with our meeting. This is a public meeting of the West Bend Joint School District Number 1 School Board. More than 24 hours prior to the meeting, notice of the time, place, date, and subject matter of this meeting was posted at the entrance doors at the Education Service Center and at the West Bend Community Memorial Library. A copy was also sent to the Daily News, WIBD, Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, and other media sources that have requested notice of our meetings. Superintendent Wimmer, I would ask, could you please confirm that this meeting was properly posted?
Yes, it was.
Great, thank you. Please join me as it rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we recognize a quorum of our board with 5 board members present. We have Tani Schmidt attending virtually, and Melanie Ergot has an excused absence, so we'll catch her next time. So moving along, next is approval of our agenda. And actually, before I begin that, because we have Tani, because you're attending virtually, what we'll do is we will conduct all our votes by roll call. So as soon as I forget that, I'm going to ask my fellow members to remind me of that. So with that being said, next on our agenda is approval of the agenda, which was circulated in advance. Are there any questions regarding the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the agenda. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Nancy. Final discussion. And time for the roll. All right. Ms. Schmidt.
Yes.
Mr. Ongert.
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson.
Yes.
Ms. Justman?
Yes.
Mr. Rebholz?
Yes.
Ms. Ergot is absent, and Mr. Swiger votes yes. That motion carries. All right, we have an approved agenda. We're going to move on to our student reports, and we actually have 3 students with us tonight. So we're going to break this up into 3 parts. And I think I was just going to say, why don't we all 3 come to the podium? So I'm going to introduce. One is Hasti. Let me see if I have this right. Gasim Vigar? Am I close? Not really. My apologies, but we're going to have you introduce yourself. We also have Noah Minty and Reese Cheesick, if I have that right. So who's going to go first tonight? Fantastic. All right. Hasti, did I get that part right? Not either. All right. Come on forward and introduce yourself. And my apologies for not getting your name correct.
Oh, that's okay. My name is Hasti
Gosemi Vigar. Yeah, very good. We'll just make sure that your microphone is on. If we could just get assistance there for a second. We want to be sure everyone can hear you.
There we go. Sounds good.
All right. One more time, if you could.
All right. My name is Hasti Gosemi Vigar. I am a senior at West Bend East, and I'm more than happy to be here to talk some important updates about our academics at our school. So our first semester ended, and obviously there are new things that are happening. First up, we have our local scholarship applications that are due this week, Friday, February 10th. And a lot of seniors, including myself, have to get those letters of recommendations and applications turned in. And the interviews for that will take place during the week of March 13th. Next up, we have the practice ACT exam for juniors, which is about to happen in February 20th, and it's meant to help and prepare juniors when they take their actual ACT on March 7th. Next, we have our West Bend annual art exhibition. Every year, the West Bend Community Memorial Library has an art exhibition where high school students who were in first semester had an art class, such as ceramics, jewelry and art design, AP art and design, drawing, painting. They get to show their artwork publicly. And it's open for anyone to come during library hours, and it runs from February 1st to February 28th. Our Multicultural Club and Black Student Union also present their 6th annual Black History Month celebration on February 24th at 6:30 p.m. in the Auditorium Civil Writing Arts Center. And it's free to attend, it's open to public, and anyone can come. Next, we have our Reality Day coming up, which is specifically for students who are in personal finance, which is around 200 East and West. And Reality Day is a day that happens annually where students are presented with a salary based on their job preference that they would like to potentially pursue after graduation. And they are presented with random demographics, whether that would be having a certain credit score or having debt or having a spouse. And they move through stations such as insurance, banking, vehicles, housing, and they get to use their money management skills and make choices. And it's really meant to be an eye-opening experience and show students, introduce students to real-life scenarios. And this has been sponsored by Glacier Hills Credit Union. And prior to COVID, it was always introduced for community members to also come and help. But since COVID, it has happened at a classroom setting. And this year is the first year that it's going back to the way it was traditionally was. We had one in in the first semester, and we're going to have one in spring as well. We also had Gearing Up for High School on January 25th that happened, which was a huge success. And this day, basically, the students in middle school, they get to come to high school and tour the building, meet new teachers, get introduced to new academic extracurricular opportunities that are available to them. And students were greeted usually by the high school drumline, by our principal, Ms. Potter, and current high school students, especially crew advisors who help with our underclassmen throughout the year. And overall, it was a huge success, and although families and students may have come feeling scared, they definitely left feeling excited. So, thank you. I will pass the mic to Noah Minty, who's going to talk about clubs and extracurriculars.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I'm Noah Minty, here to talk to you guys about clubs and co-curriculars. This next month is filled with several key events for West Bend High School's talented members of clubs and co-curriculars. Here are some of the highlights. So first off, every year on the third week of February, our musical club has West Bend residents clamoring for tickets to their latest performance. This year, they're taking a swing at Anastasia, an adaptation of the 20th Century Fox movie by the same name. The story is based off of the age-old mystery of what happened to Grand Duchess Anastasia Romanoff. We follow her quest to find home, love, and family as the cast performs songs pulled directly from the film itself, including Journey to the Past and Once Upon a December. Tickets are currently up for purchase at GoFan, and performances take place on February 17th at 7 p.m., February 18th at 7 p.m., and February 19th at 2 p.m. Moving on to Youth Impact Club. Set on making West Bend a better place, Youth Impact Club is tackling suicide via Day of Hope. This amazing event takes place at the East Cafeteria at 5:30 on February 16th. We will feature guest speakers Carson Mole and Tasha Sue, both suicide attempt survivors, here to spread hopeful messages about the nature of mental health and suicide prevention. Entry is free and open to everyone, as is dinner served by Qdoba. Thank you to our Youth Impact Club for such wonderful opportunities. Forensics. This month, our East Forensics team is going to be hosting our annual Forensics tournament on February 11th, and hundreds have already signed on. It'll be a day to remember, but not too long after our West Forensics team, myself included, will again make host of our school as the West Bend West Forensics tournament is set for March 11th. It's a busy time for the team. Charity Week. Charity Week is fast approaching, and every year Student Council chooses a different charity coinciding with each day of the week. So here are our charities. On the 27th, Monday, we have Chicks for a Cause, a local cancer support organization. Tuesday, February 28th, we have Friends, Inc., a domestic abuse shelter. Wednesday, March 1st, we have NAMI for suicide prevention. Thursday, March 2nd, Blue Lotus. And Friday, March 3rd, the Gary Sinise Foundation for veterans and first responders. On this day, Delta Defense is matching every dollar earned with $2. Saturday, March 4th, is going to be the Student Council and Boys and Girls Club hosting the charity dance. All ticket sales go to the Boys and Girls Club, and Regal Wear will be matching dollar for dollar every bit of money collected from the dance. Thank you. And off for athletics is Reese Cheezick.
Hello, I'm Reese Cheezick. I'm a sophomore at West Bend West, and I'm going to be going over our athletic department. So our West dance team headed to state last weekend, and congratulations to our entire team for qualifying in POM and taking third place out of 14 teams. And a big shout out to our 3 soloists, Rachel Hopper, Caitlin McFarland, and Lauren Siddell, for qualifying for state with their solos. And we're so proud of all of you and how you performed at state this past weekend. Our East dance team also competed at state this past weekend, and they earned first place in kick and an invitation to the state. And sophomores Aubrey and Michaela also earned an all-state invite to their solo routines. So congratulations to our 2023 kick regional champions, and good luck. Another great highlight includes West Bend West Junior Hannah Andrews for participating for Team USA in the French Cup this weekend in synchronized skating. Hannah's team, Fond du Lac Blades, qualified for the competition, which took place in Rouen, France. She's also a member of the Kettle Moraine Figure Skating Club in West Bend. The team won a silver medal over the weekend. Some other athletic celebrations and updates include state send-off went well on Friday for both East and West varsity dance teams. Ice Bears won the North Shore Conference for the 3rd year in a row, so congratulations to Coach Driscoll and our hockey team. West Wrestling is undefeated for conference, and this is the first time West has won conference since 2013. The girls' ski team has taken first and have been undefeated in every race. The team is currently 7th in conference and 1 more week until state. East boys bowling also made it to state, and our swim and dive teams have their all-conference this weekend, which they took 3rd. Our snowboarding teams, both girls and boys, is going to state on February 18th. We are also excited to be hosting the gymnastics sectionals on Thursday, February 23rd, and this past week we beat Port Washington and we're 2nd for conference. Our girls hockey beat Arrowhead 4-3 on February 2nd, and our East and West basketball teams are really excited for our Friday night game, which the scores for boys varsity was East 65, West 53, girls varsity East 67, and West 37. Thank you for listening to all the great things happening in our schools.
Right. Thank you, all of you, for coming and keeping us well connected. Yes, fantastic.
Thank you. Great job.
We appreciate it very much. Thank you for keeping us connected to our schools. So this is the awkward time where we pause, because my guess is you may have some studies or other things to do. You are welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting. Or you may go. But thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. All right. Next on our agenda is public participation, and I have 2 public participation comment cards. Are there any others anyone wishes to bring forward? All right, hearing none, what I will do is I will read Board Policy 187 to kick this off. We've come to the public participation portion of our agenda. Board Policy 187 prescribes the nature and procedures for this segment. I summarize the policy at this time, but copies of the policy are available in the back of the room, and I urge you to familiarize yourself with the policy in its entirety. Residents of the district, parents of children in district schools, and employees of the district may participate. Participants desiring to address the board should obtain and complete our participant comment card near the entry and turn it over to the president prior to the meeting or when allowed by the president. Participants may comment concerning an agenda item or a non-agenda item. Each participant will be called to the podium and given 3 minutes to speak. The participant must state his or her name in relation to the district. This information will appear in the minutes of the meeting. The board will not engage in debate concerning the remarks or take immediate action. The board may refer the matter to the superintendent, a committee, or take the remarks into consideration in future action. Board Policy 872 provides a formal process for citizen complaints, and Board Policy 520 provides a formal process for employee complaints. The board recommends use of these procedures as they guarantee a fair and timely response. I'll be inviting participants forward to speak. There's a visible timer to help you manage your time, and also to help ensure that all participants are heard and the meeting runs efficiently. I ask you to please abstain from conversation, comment, or applause during or after public participation comments. So with that, I'll invite our participants forward in the order that I received the cards. First of all will be Mr. Robert Reichel. Mr. Reichel. And Mr. Reichel, it says that you're a resident of the district. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Great. The next 3 minutes are yours.
Okay, my name is Robert Reichel. I live in the town of Trenton. And just to clarify things, I am not a public sector employee. I never have been, but I have very deep concerns what's been going on with this district. So what I've been following up on or checking up on. It's the rate of inflation for 2022 ranges from 6.5% to 9.1%, with the average being 8%. That's by the United States Labor Department. Recently, our elected county supervisors voted to give our sheriff's deputies an 8% pay increase. So, since the beginning of Act 10, our public sector employees have been pretty much treated, I think, unfairly. In the 12 years of that time frame, Act 10 has had a negative impact on our teachers, staff, and their actual spending power. Due to higher insurance rates and lack of decent pay increases, their standard of living has actually decreased. I believe if our elected supervisors can dole out 8% for our sheriff's department, this elected school board can see fit to give our teachers or our staff the similar pay increase. So what I really want to say is our teachers are very dedicated and hardworking individuals, and they're actually really deserving of this pay increase that I'm telling you about. So I implore this board to right the wrongs that have been committed in the last 12 years and come for or be faithful and bargain faithfully to increase the pay structure up to the allowable maximum. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And our second and final speaker tonight is Ms. Jody Geenan. Ms. Geenan, it says on the card you're a resident of the district. That's correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Great. The next 3 minutes are yours.
All right. I am here to speak against the removal of the nepotism policy 511.1, which is on tonight's agenda, from what I understand. My friend, who was also a former school board member, Bart Williams, co-wrote this policy with the then HR director after an internal study showed 20 to 25% of all West Bend School District employees were related. And that was only the percent that they could prove. In other words, it's very likely that they missed some due to different last names, such as from marriages, divorces, name changes, etc. So that means that the 20 to 25% is probably actually higher than that we had at that time. Hiring mostly relatives is at the expense of getting the objectively best and most qualified teachers, administrators, and staff. It's no longer about what you know, but who you know. Not hiring family members also benefits with an increased diversity, I know a lot of people like that word nowadays, of employees. Also those from different high schools, colleges, regions, which can only benefit the students. Remember that the best organizations have a nepotism policy as best practice. This should hold true to public schools even more so. Finally, in case anybody's wondering, this statute did hold up to a full legal review. It passed a full legal review not quite 6 years ago. So again, I'm asking you to please keep the policy. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That concludes the public participation portion of our agenda. So we'll move to our consent agenda. On our consent agenda, we have a number of items. Let's see. Minutes of the January 2023 regular board meeting and executive session. 1 contract, no resignations, 8 retirements, and disbursements posted to January 28th of 2023. I'd move to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joel. Motion and second to approve the consent agenda. Any questions or final discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Rebholz.
Yes.
Mr. Ongert.
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson.
Yes.
Mrs. Swigert votes yes. Ms. Justman.
Yes.
Ms. Schmidt.
Yes.
And Ms. Ergott is absent. That motion carries. All right, next on our agenda is, as I scroll down here, pardon me. All right, we are on to reports, and our first report is our school report for Green Tree. And I was just going to say, I think that Dr. Reese is going to kick this off, but take it away. Take it away.
Thank you. So we are happy to have John Groff here tonight to present on behalf of Green Tree. John has been the interim principal at Green Tree since about October of this year. He stepped in seamlessly and helped that school grow and just offered a really seamless transition for the school. So he's going to be presenting data from the first section of the year, and this is because, if you remember, with the transition, it was a little bit late, and then he was ill one of the days. So John is here tonight, excitingly, to present Green Tree.
Great. Mr. Groff, welcome.
Thank you very much, everybody. It's a great honor, first of all, to be the principal at Green Tree. I love it there. The staff's fantastic. The students are fantastic. And so is the learning community. So I'm going to kind of follow through the pyramid and go through student learning, customer engagement, safe and secure and effective and efficient as a district goal. Realize this is all driven by our staff. Our staff has a building leadership team that is second to none. They're leaders in their own rights, and I appreciate the work they put in place so that I could step in and that it was very seamless. So when it comes to student learning this year, our goal was to increase 5% from the Wisconsin Forward and STAR exams. So it's a spring to spring goal. So if you look at grade 3 and 4 first forward, we were at 39%. Our goal for this year will be 44%. STAR was 47%, and we hope to get that to 52%. Some of the strategies that have been deployed throughout the school year include push-in intervention and specialist support so that intervention and students are in the classroom as much as possible. Coaching and support by our literacy specialist, Mary Ellen Sosha, and really making sure that we are providing differentiated support to all staff members. Observations of other classroom teachers, so doing learning walks and seeing other teachers teach, and short cycle goals. Making sure that our teachers are meeting, looking at the data, and saying what's the next step in a student's learning. When it comes to math, we also had a 5% growth goal. So we look at, I'll start with STAR. So in the spring, we had 50% of last year that were proficient. This year, we're aiming for 55%. When it comes to the Wisconsin Forward exam, we were at 61%, and we're shooting for 66% growth, 66% proficient. One of the great achievements at Green Tree this last school year was 100% growth in mathematics, which is phenomenal, which means every student made that jump from 3rd to 4th grade. One of the things that we're doing is we're reviewing bridges and making sure that we're using all the components to fidelity, whether that be number, corner, or workplace, which are 2 components of each lesson. Once again, going back to short cycle assessments and going, are we being responsive to the needs of our students? And always going, okay, so if a student is here, what's the next step in their learning progression? We've integrated digital tools, so really Happy Numbers and Dreambox. Dreambox has been great, I know, at 3-4 for some goal setting. Happy Numbers is also very good with our K-2 students that we've really focused in on. And one of the things that you could learn about Dreambox is it actually matches up with our Bridges math program. When it comes to engagement and customer satisfaction, we looked at increasing our goal of recommending Green Tree as a place to work from 82.5% to 90%. And honestly, it's a fantastic place to work. As I said, the staff are excellent at what they do. Our leadership team has really taken this on and said, okay, how do we make sure even in a transition year, we recommend this as a place to work? And some of the things that we've done has been really intentional with meetings. Making sure that teachers have time to collaborate is always something that's important. And having specific time for our professional learning communities. Making sure that teachers meet on a weekly basis, sometimes with a short message to begin, but then time to go over their students. Teacher time is the most valuable thing, and when they're able to be in a room together and support each other, it's a great thing. We have conversations during that time about co-teaching, so having a special education teacher and regular education teacher work together in the classroom. We talk about how students are doing in intervention, and it's really to make sure that it is really a collaborative learning community at Green Tree, and that's honestly the great staff that's posted in that picture, and I'm proud of each and every one of them. Safe and secure. So when you look at our office referrals, we're looking at 0 to 1 behavior documentations and trying to get that goal from about 76% to 82%. Right now, and Miss Melstrand will go over the data, we're at about 87%. It really focuses in on welcoming students into the classroom. When a student feels welcome and they're able to relax, you're able to get the most out of them academically. So making sure they feel welcome, having an optimistic closure in which you go over how that went, that lesson, and really where are we going to go next. Active engagement so that when students aren't directly with the teacher, they're also engaged in their learning, because you can run the greatest guided reading group, and if they walk away and they're not engaged, it's a struggle to keep them learning in the right direction. And then weekly meetings to go over student needs. We have a Tier 2 team that looks at our behavior data and sometimes has to troubleshoot if a kid's having a hard time. And it's a good collaborative group, and we're often able to come up with a good method to help that student. And sometimes it's just one step at a time, and that's okay. These are just some pictures. If we look at it, we have a co-teaching model. We have students that are actively engaged. We do celebrations throughout the year. We have a family engagement night this week that's connected kind of to the Super Bowl, and we're going to do an NFL night. We're going to have a math section, a reading section, makerspace, so going in there and doing STEM-related activities. And you can see there a kid on a VR looking through, and I don't know what he's looking at, but I'm sure it's something very interesting besides beautiful, scenic Wisconsin in the winter. We also recognize our students on a weekly basis based off of Gator grins that we give them, and it's for following the Gator way. Most importantly, thank you honestly for the opportunity to lead Green Tree this year. It's honestly just a great place to be. So thank you.
We'll pause for questions. Thank you for your presentation. Questions?
I have a couple.
Mr. Donaldson?
So I'll just start with the reading section, obviously. So we'll just go down the line here. So you obviously have a goal of 5%. I think that's standard across the board for every school wants to increase 5%. But outside of the normal things that you guys do, reading interventions, everything else, I mean, that's kind of a standard what you guys are pushing with the same thing that we do all the time. Do we have any new ideas? I mean, are we thinking about doing a reading log to increase reading and time reading for students like that, in these schools? Do you guys currently do that now?
So we do confer with students, and they often log what they read, and we also have writing about reading. So every student at Green Tree has a reader's notebook, and I think it was last week or the week before, we pulled all those out as a staff. And so when I say we have that intentional time for professional learning communities, we went over, hey, are we meeting the benchmarks of where we would expect students to be? And then how are we going to move that forward? So yeah, every student kind of logs, and you often can walk in and you'll ask a student when they're independently reading, like, hey, can you tell me a little bit about your reading history? And they'll usually be able to say, hey, I read a lot of historical fiction, therefore I'm focused on this genre.
Is that just during school hours or outside?
So usually the writing about reading log is something that is done in the school day, but it also spills over. So if they come back and they're like, hey, I want to write about what I read at home, because often the books that they're reading during independent reading may also be at home. Fourth grade does Battle of the Books, and that's a competition where they read consistently, and they read a lot outside of the school day as well.
But that's not a mandatory thing, so that's...
I will say this, though. Our teachers are so good at selling it, it almost becomes something they do.
For how long does that last?
It's a couple months.
So, I mean, a couple months out of 9. I'm just saying, I think we can get better results if we do, hey, everyone has to go home and get their parents to sign off 20, 30 minutes a night. I'll push that every day, that we see grades like this that half of the students are failing. It's not against you, it's not against teachers. I'm just saying reading is the best way to increase your proficiency in reading.
Appreciate it.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the next thing, I was curious on how the integrated digital tools are doing. Are you guys seeing increases with that? As when we went over that, I was against it more in person. I thought was better, but I would be love to have this proven wrong.
Like everything, whenever we implement something, we often go, what's the goal? And a lot of our teachers, like conferring, they'll do goal setting. So you might walk into a classroom and they have all their Dreambox data posted, and kids go around and say, hey, I really want to focus on this. This is my next step. So, you know, along the way, they've been great at going, okay, how do we use best practice aligned with these digital tools to get the best results? Which is often around that, hey, you know, John, I want you to work on this standard today. It's something that also aligns with what we're doing right now, but is a good extra support.
So would you expect by the end of the year, because this is the first year implemented, correct?
Yes.
Would you expect a higher number than your goal because of these tools?
That's our goal. Our goal is always
Well, the goal is
exceed
still
what we say.
5%.
Yep, it's a 5%, but that's what we want to reach and go farther than
Okay.
that.
And then I'll just get to the last thing, the employee engagement. So almost 18% of the staff wouldn't recommend. Is that what I'm seeing?
Based off of last year's results.
Do you guys get exit data from stuff like that? Like as far as, do you guys send a second survey, you know, trying to figure out why 18% of the staff wouldn't recommend?
So when someone leaves the district, we actually do formal exit interviews and collect that data and then talk about themes that we see. We do an overall district engagement report. Lenny Hansen presents that to the full board, and then we talk about some of those pieces in recruiting, retention, things that come up as you talked about, ownership over professional learning, calendar changes, things that are meaningful to people that come through in exit interviews or other opportunities to provide feedback. That's where you'll see those nuances, but they're formally presented then as part of the overall district picture.
But as it sits, so we do this, and you get, I'm hoping 100% of the staff replies to this, and, you know, 17.5% says they wouldn't recommend that. So potentially 17.5% of the people that wouldn't recommend that are still sitting in the buildings, correct? I mean, am I understanding this right?
Nope, you're looking at, so the exit interview that you brought up before was one avenue, but
And
you're
that's
talking
when
about.
somebody leaves. I
Yep.
understand that part.
Yep.
I'm saying the survey right here is satisfaction.
Correct,
17.5% of the people aren't satisfied.
correct.
I'm getting to, do we ask them a secondary survey or try to put a secondary survey to gain more information on why they wouldn't recommend it?
So we use the district engagement survey, we do those pieces, and then at the site level, and that's why every principal is kind of talking about those pieces of data, because each site will have a nuance to it as well, where they unpack their specific data as a team. They each have leadership teams that work through, talk about, and analyze why that is, and then each team will have some discrete ideas for improvement, because they may not be a district full blanket measure to improve things, but we unpack that at the district level. But there might be some things specific to Green Tree
Yeah.
that they unpack and what would be meaningful to us
So-
for our school.
So one of the things is our building leadership team talks about our engagement data consistently. That was part of that providing intentional time for teachers came out of that. So we looked at our schedule and said, hey, we have meetings here, here, and here. What do you need? We need time with staff. Therefore, hey, how do we make sure that when we meet, it's super intentional and has a purpose, which ended up in that place of being, hey, on Tuesdays, we have kind of our goal teams, which is our building teams, and then on Wednesdays, we have our professional learning community. So a lot of that comes out of, hey, you know, and especially this year, how do you want to shape Green Tree to be the school that you want to work in? And that's a huge thing for me, and that's why, honestly, it is a great staff, and I would hope that those results go up.
Nancy?
Superintendent Wimmer, a couple things here. I just want to make sure everyone understands. And don't leave, because this will also maybe be for you. The question that Mr. Donaldson said that, I just want to be clear, when he made the comment that half of the students are failing, that is not true. So could you both speak to that, please? Because I don't want there to be misinformation that half of the students at Green Tree are failing, because I would guess that number is probably more like 1 or 2% that are actually failing or something of that nature. So please, could you correct that data?
Sure. So for Green Tree, as well as any other school, there's multiple measures. So you're looking at points in time on a formative assessment, right? A
check-in.
benchmark along the way. And Tina Van Roo is actually speaking tonight with some of our mid-year results and can unpack that a little bit more. But that's one of our checkpoints. And then the state assessment is the forward exam on those pieces. Then there's classroom assessments, observations, grades, all those pieces that kind of put together a larger data profile for a school as well as a district. So what we also intentionally do is raise that bar in STAR to a higher metric for ourselves so that we're trending and pushing to be on track for increased performance on our state assessment. We're always, I don't think any school or district is ever satisfied with their results. That we're working on a continuous improvement model. So, to everyone's point through their questions is how do we get these better? What can we do? What are the little things? What are the big things? What at every level, what are some of the levers that we can kind of pull on to increase student results? So that's what everyone's speaking to individually as schools, but we would do the same as a district, and what are those pieces that we're going to be doing?
Thank you. And then one other comment, as far as the customer satisfaction survey, obviously that's, we don't know who's not satisfied per se. I mean, this is an anonymous survey that your staff, basically fill out. So if, I'll pick on you because you're in front of us, if Mr. Groff fills this out and says, I'm not satisfied, we don't have a way to go back and say, hey, John, what don't you like about Green Tree, or how can we fix this? I mean, you're actually working on generalities at this point. I mean, if 12% of the people are unhappy, there could be 15 reasons as to why they're unhappy, for instance. So, I mean, you're really looking at trends and data such as that. You're not able to connect with each individual person because obviously we wouldn't know that information, because I'm sure that's not really a legal way to obtain information to have people sign their name to their satisfaction survey. So I just want to make sure we were all clear on that.
And we also, though, and one of the things that I've done this year is I culture round, so I meet with staff to kind of say, hey, I want to know about them as a person as well. So what's something new outside? What's something that's going well in the building? What's something going well as a district? What is an opportunity for growth, so that I can kind of figure out, though, to your point, like, hey, is there something that we can do to improve? And that's also with our building leadership team of, hey, what are you noticing? What do you wonder if we try something different? Can we improve the environment of the school?
Thank you.
Yep.
Kurt?
Yeah, I just got a comment from both my kids. Maybe I'll say first, I'm all about us being better, looking in the mirror and what we can do better. So I appreciate you taking those questions and taking our comments in context. We all want to be better. That's some of my comments. So I appreciate it. I just want to know, I had a student, my son and daughter in Green Tree. My son is 6 years older, so I had 10 years of interaction with Green Tree staff, so I know many of them. I want to thank the past teachers and the current teachers. What I witnessed in my kids' classes, both my son and daughter, different learning environments or cycles. I think it's tough teaching grade school. So I appreciate the staff teaching all levels in a class and being passionate about their work. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Other questions, comments? All right, thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Groff, appreciate it. Next on our agenda is STAR Data Report, and I believe Christina Van Roo is going to present this. Our Student Assessment Data Coordinator. Welcome back. Good evening.
All right, so as it's been previewed, we're going to go through the winter assessment results. Just to re-ground ourselves, STAR is the district's universal screener. We give this assessment to our students in grades K through 10 3 times a year, in fall, winter, and spring. And as pictured on the slide, you can see that there are a variety of assessments that the students participate in. So students in kindergarten and first grade take the STAR Early Literacy Exam, which is a pre-reading assessment. Grades 2 through 10 take STAR Reading, and then grades 1 through 8 take STAR Math. And then at the high school level, the majority of our 9th and 10th graders take a course-alike STAR assessment that aligns to either their algebra or geometry assessment. When I've presented in the past, we've talked a lot about a percentile rank. We use that to set our benchmarks to see how kids are doing at those grade level expectations at different points in the years. This time I thought I would put a visual up that might help kind of explain how that data works in the different levels of performance that the students have. So a national percentile rank is a score that shows how the kiddos are doing compared to their grade level peers nationwide that have taken the test at the same time. That score that they're given falls on a 1 to 99 scale. And then we take that 1 to 99 scale and break it down into 4 different levels of proficiency benchmarks. At the district, levels 3 and 4, as pictured in the blue and green, are considered to be proficient at grade level. We've mentioned before that the STAR benchmarks for proficiency are set to be predictors of the Wisconsin Forward state exam that the students in grades 3 through 8 take in the spring of each school year. For STAR reading, those end-of-year benchmarks aligned to Wisconsin Forward, students are on average targeting the 50th percentile rank. For STAR math, the achievement is set a little bit higher, and the students are targeting that 70th percentile rank. With those 2 different predictors, we are able to closely see how students might perform when they take the state assessment.
And I think that's one of the things that we've talked about. Sometimes we're in the mental model of grades on a 0 to 100, and, you know, a 80 is a C and a 90 is an A, you know, those kinds of things. And we're pushing in a mental model on something because it kind of looks the same, but we're, you know, thank you for trying to tease apart how a 50th percentile and those pieces are a little bit different. So thanks for that.
No, I appreciate that. This was, when I looked at the materials ahead, I said, I don't know if this is the first time it was presented this way, but that really does help, because I agree. When you look at 55% proficiency, you think, well, gee, when I went to high school, 55 is a fail. But that actually means we're better than the national average, slightly, but we're better than the national average. And so that's a reminder, I think, to ourselves as we view this data, because I think the public often misunderstands that. So thank you for the explanation. And there's always room to grow. I'm not saying 55 is the right number.
Absolutely not.
But
And there's room for us as we present data for different audiences to figure out how we can portray that and show, like you said, the point in time. And a lot of times we've talked too around, we're presenting data around the end of year target. So it just feels like all year we're failing till we reach something instead of, you know, those things. So we've had a lot of internal conversations around how we can kind of improve that. I know Tina has talked with her curriculum committee as well, and we'll continue to kind of improve those things. And I think, you know, listening to the questions that we get, that helps us kind of frame that, how we can present. So thank you for that, Tina.
Yeah, and I've talked through these things before, but I always feel like a good visual can kind of help too. I do talk with my hands a lot, and that doesn't always carry well. So I hope that this brings a little clarity to one of the scores that STAR produces and how STAR reading and math do vary. I know I say that this is normed data, so a national percentile rank is normed. So just to give context to that, Renaissance, which is the company that hosts the STAR assessments, reset their norm groups in 2022, so post-COVID. So depending on which of the 3 assessments you look at, there was anywhere from 1.2 million students included in the STAR early literacy norm group, all the way up to 9.6 million included in the STAR reading. So when we say there's a national norm peer group, the group is very extensive. So for each of the 3 assessments, STAR Early Literacy, Reading, and Math, I'm going to take you through a similar series of slides. The first is looking at our kindergartners and first graders combined, looking at our current winter results as well as the past 2 winters. As you can see, over time, our test participation has been high, so the results are valid and really include the majority of our students. And the results had a little dip, but also had a rebound this year for winter. When we take that information and break it down by grade level, you can look at these table slides in 2 different ways. So if you look at kindergarten horizontally, you could see how 3 different groups of kindergartners performed year after year each winter. You can also look at these loosely and diagonally, as highlighted in red, to see how a cohort of students did in kindergarten last winter compared to how they did as first graders this winter. So grade level at a time or a loose cohort of student performance. Lastly, if we focus on just this year's results, there are 2 bar graphs, one for kindergarten and one for first grade. And it's showing in the light blue how many of the students in fall met the benchmark, and then how many students in winter met the benchmark. So again, with that end of year benchmarking in mind, you can see that there has been tremendous growth by both grade levels just from September through December testing. So we'll move on to STAR reading, which is given to students in grades 2 through 10. Again, you can see our current winter results compared to the previous 2 winter. Again, high test participation. And then we'll break it down by grade level. So similarly, you could pick any row and look how a group of, for example, 3rd graders have performed winter after winter. Or as highlighted in red, you could follow a loose cohort of students and see how they have performed as they've moved up grade by grade year after year.
And just when Tina's talking about a loose cohort, it means she hasn't screened out. She's just saying a group as they advance in the grade level. So she hasn't screened out kids who moved in, kids who moved out. So she's just saying loosely that cohort is movement. So we haven't done an actual. So when you look at 4th grade results, those aren't exactly maybe all the kids who started with us in 2nd grade. So it's just a loose cohort in that manner.
Yeah, it's kind of tracking a grad year as they progress through the district, but obviously students move in, move out, et cetera. And then for STAR reading, each bar graph is represented a different grade. Again, the light blue shows this fall, and then the dark blue with this winter. And you can see the different growth that each grade level has made. For STAR Math, students in grades 1 through 8 participate in this assessment. No matter what winter you look at, our results are the same, and our test participation is high. But as we break it down by grade level, you can see that there's quite a variance between performance amongst the grade levels. And then here's the STAR Math displaying fall to winter. And on this slide, you can see every single grade level had an increase between the 2 testing windows. At the high school, as mentioned earlier, we have 2 assessments that are course alike. There is a small percentage of students that do participate in the STAR Math, which is the general math exam. But then there is STAR Algebra for our algebra students and geometry for our geometry students. So here you can see the percentage that were meeting the benchmarks last winter to this winter. And there's only 2 years because last year was the first year that we had the algebra and geometry assessments available at the high school. And then you can also see itemized under the algebra and geometry assessment the amount of students that participated. The majority of our 9th graders participate in the algebra, and the majority of our 10th graders participate in geometry. This chart's a little busier, so I don't have a loose cohort highlighted for your reference. But again, if you look at the 21-22 algebra column for grade 9, loosely under the 22-23 geometry 10th grade, that would be the typical course path that the students would take. And then summarized on this are just those majority students, the majority of ninth graders taking algebra, and how they did fall to winter this year, and then the majority of our 10th graders who take geometry. After the students take 2 different STAR assessments, so fall and winter, STAR gives us another data point that's called the student growth percentile. This is new information to the board. We haven't presented this before because it's a measure that's used for individual students. So basically, when we look at those proficiency benchmarks, we want to see how a student is doing compared to all of their national peers who took the test at the same grade level and at the same time. The student growth percentile takes that group and narrows it even more, as itemized by the little blue circle, and they put you in a peer group. So if you and I both took the assessment for the first time and we got a percentile rank of 9, we are now in a peer group. And the next time we test, we're only going to be compared to one another. So we're not comparing apples and oranges, we're comparing students who started at the same place. STAR says that this could be a really cool tool to think about when it is time for scholarships, et cetera. You don't want to be compared to someone who's not at that same starting point, but you want to be growing at a greater rate than someone that you might be competing for in a scholarship. These SGP scores have a very similar score range where they go on a 1 to 99 scale. There are 3 different growth categories. There's a low growth rate where a student could get a 1 to 34 SGP, a typical, which falls between 35 and 65, and then high, which is 66 to 99. The district, new this year, set our SGP expectation to 50. In years prior, it was set at 35, and we decided to challenge and make it a little bit more rigorous, and this is a new data point for you guys. The really cool thing, and I say cool because I'm one of the kind of data geeks, but you can utilize both scores. So when you want to know if a student is doing, how they're doing at grade level, that's one piece of information. But you also want to know how the student is growing and at what rate they're growing. This is a mock-up of a report that STAR kicks out, and basically it puts students, which would be represented by each blue dot, into 4 different quadrants. So as noted by the 3 columns, there are the 3 different growth rates, low, typical, and high. And the bolded vertical line is our 50 expectation of SGP. And then the percentile rank is on the left, and again, it goes 0 to 99. The horizontal bold line would be that grade level expectation that we're targeting, for example, 50 for that end of year benchmark. And then the students are plotted in each of those areas. That way, when teachers do have time to look at their own data or come together with their team, they can have really targeted conversations about students in those different buckets. So on the bottom right, we might have a student who isn't at that grade level line yet. They're below the bold line, but they're in the high growth category. So then the teachers could say, something's working. They're growing at a fast rate. What is it, and how can we keep that going? Because if they continue to grow at a fast rate, they're going to chip away towards that grade level proficiency. So each quadrant kind of comes with a series of guiding questions that can be used to help teachers target what is or isn't working with students and try something new if needed.
And just another way that systems challenge themselves, right? We want to make sure that all students are increasing in their performance, not just going, oh, yep, that one came to us smart and we're good, they've met this expectation. So the kids who've already met end of year grade level expectations, we still have an accountability for that child to keep moving him or her forward. So that's why we analyze both sets. It's not okay that they've already met this, it's how am I going to continue to grow them? And this helps us do that and challenge ourselves as a system to keep doing so.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the next time that the students are going to take STAR will be in May. That will give the teachers kind of that year-end information, but between now and then, our students in grades 3 through 11 will be preparing to take the state assessments, such as Wisconsin Forward, the Pre-ACT Secure, and the ACT. All of those results we won't be able to present to the school board until next November once DPI releases the embargo, but we'll definitely have our end-of-year STAR information available for you.
Thank you. Not part of Tina's presentation, but just wanted to give kudos to her. One of the things that we've done as a district administrative team is start program analysis, program reviews. And Tina's led a cross-representative team in the district in looking at assessment, all the assessments we use, every grade level, what's it yielding, how are we using the results, so that we can make some recommendations. So they did some really amazing foundational work that'll come through curriculum. They've got some recommendations. Just the future of assessment, because assessment can be a powerful tool if we're using it right. So it's nice to kind of look around, see how we're using, what we're using as data points. So just a thank you to everyone who participated in that thus far. There's more work to be done, and they'll present that to curriculum. But again, it's just important to know that just like any other cycle of looking at things, we do that with the assessments that we give as well. So thank you to Tina and that team for the work that they've done there too.
Sure. Any questions?
Questions? So you said the next test round will be in May?
Yeah, the first 2 weeks of May.
Yeah. And then how long is it before the data is compiled and brought back? About?
The data's live, so the day the window closes is a Friday, and I pull everything Monday. So it's just a matter of when the next board meeting schedule kind of aligns.
Around that quickly. Great.
I like the graph charts you showed with the fall and winter.
Yeah.
Because it really, shows either the growth or decline. In this case tonight, it looked like very
lot of
positive growth. And so, and then obviously the next assessment, you get that third bar chart to really just show where you start the year and end the year. So I like the way you presented that tonight.
Good, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Excuse me. Next, we have our policy committee report. And Mr. Ongert, who is the chair of that committee, I know that last time you weren't able to attend, but we move forward with some items.
Yeah, I appreciate the superintendent and Chris and John met last Tuesday. I was out of town. I did watch almost all of the meeting. I will admit I didn't watch all of it, but I watched almost all of it. And the policy committee reviewed the 400 series policies, the first review of 400. We meet again February 16th. To continue reviewing 400 series policies. There's some that will be brought forth tonight for first readings, but the committee is well underway with several meetings scheduled in the next handful of months. And so thank you for the work you did last Tuesday, and we'll keep plowing ahead with policy.
That's great. Any questions? All right, we're on to the superintendent's report. Superintendent Wimmer.
Speaking of policy, as you noted, the next part around students in the 400 series is really specific. We kind of chunked them. The last set that we looked at was around nursing, medical services, et cetera. So we've been kind of chunking that in a way that makes sense. The next one is around behavior and discipline. And we're going to do a little something different as a policy committee. We're inviting in to have a working meeting with several principals and administrators. So we use those subgroups to kind of inform and bring things forward to policy. But we talked about the intersection of policy around behavior and then some practice guides and what that looks in the real world. We do a lot of work, and you have another presentation on student engagement, behavior, those kinds of things. So we really wanted to have a more robust conversation around that intersection of policy. In fact, just today, Mr. Donaldson was doing some of his homework before policy and finding different models and things to think about. One of our goals as a policy committee is to make sure that our policy is accessible to the public, but then all the supporting documents are really clear, especially when it comes to behavior, if this, then this kind of pieces. So we're interested in kind of reviewing that, it was from another state, actually. So we're excited about the work ahead. We're going to be shifting how we have that next committee meeting, but as usual, everything that we do or discuss would come forward to the full board as well. So we'll be digging into that next layer of work on the 16th. So thank you to that team and being open to having a lot of guests for that meeting. One of the things to highlight as well is it's National School Counselors Week. So February 6th through 10th is National School Counselors Week. We have 17 counselors in our district, and we just would like to thank them for the impact that they have on helping students be successful with all aspects of their work. So thank you to our counselors. You heard our students speak about the art show that will be hosted at the library. Just a reminder that tomorrow's opening night, the artists as well as their teachers will be there at 6:30. The show goes on all month, so please visit. But if you can, the artists will be on hand to speak about their work, as will their teachers. So that is 6:30 tomorrow. Couple other events to add to your calendars. The All-District Orchestra Concert is Saturday, February 18th, 2 p.m. in the Field House. That's how many musicians and spectators we'll have for that, so it'll be a great event. And the Silverbrook 5th and 6th grade orchestra will play as well as the Badger 7th and 8th grade orchestras, and then the high school orchestra will play, and it'll end with a massive combined performance. So it's great to see the evolution of music all in the Field House that night as they start their instrument playing and the culmination with the high school and a shared performance. So mark your calendars for that. Congratulations to Lyra Keegan. They didn't note it, but she's an East sophomore who received honorable mention for her editorial cartoon in the Wisconsin Civics Game editorial writing and cartoon contest through the Wisconsin Newspapers Association. So congratulations to her. And then congratulations to Bob Holdquist. So last week, the athletic departments presented at the Friday night basketball games, presented Bob with the Distinguished Service Award by the Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association. It's presented to a person who's recognized in the school and the community as a supportive leader who assists in maintaining athletics as an integral part of the total education program. So there were some amazing stats that evening. Bob taught physical education at the West Bend High Schools for 33 years. He was also a basketball coach for 37 years, a football coach for 17 years, and today, Bob supervises the fitness center and has done that for the past 13 years. So just a thank you to Bob for his service to the district and our students, and the award was well-deserved. So it was a nice moment. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up and kind of connect the dots for the board and think about how we want to take this into the next discussion. We work really diligently on all aspects of our programs, our outcomes, and certainly as financial stewards for our community. We started kind of in summer leading in, working with our financial advisor from Baird, talking about that long-term financial part of the district. We did some refinancing. We had our final levy for some debt, and really looking and planning for a long-term financial future. And we segued that into right-sizing our district, which is the right move for our district. That's something that we need to do. We've expanded, and Dave did another work session, Dave Ross, Director of Facilities and Grounds, looking at updated all the assessments of the learning environments, furniture, fixtures, everything, so that we could pull that back together, make sure we had updated. We did an independent audit of our athletic spaces. Sometimes we look at the classrooms and the overall building, but when you think of anywhere from, kind of that intermediate school on up, the athletic fields as spaces. And then recently you approved software to start with that configuration process so we can look at different models. A lot of times your next steps are looking at an RFP, a request for proposals, around tying all those pieces together, having an independent firm come in, tie all those pieces together, and look for and host opportunities for engagement with your community, pulling in all aspects of that analysis, trying to forward think around. We've talked a lot about Jackson Elementary and some of the safety pieces of our buildings and the future of facilities. So that's one of those pieces. We are going to be welcoming 3 new board members by the 4th Monday of April, and thinking of that. So we don't want to pause that work, but we do want to have a conversation with the current team around what do we want to do, knowing that 3 people will be outgoing. what are the next steps we want to take as a team, and what are the timelines associated with that, especially when we talk about, potential new buildings, closure of buildings, those kinds of things. So I'm going to just schedule our future board members are active. They're in the audience. They're watching our meetings. So I don't think it's information that they would miss out on. We can certainly make sure they're up to speed when we onboard, but I just want to work with the president to schedule a little bit more in-depth discussion around kind of tying up all those pieces and what do we do next. Because then always the question comes around, what about a future referendum? Do we, if we need that to pursue a new school, kind of what are those pieces? So I at least wanted to start having conversations so we're not slowing down the work that we need to do ahead. Any questions from the team around that? Again, just looking and foreshadowing that I'm looking to schedule some time to dig into that a little bit more so we can talk about and get to the finish line around future facilities and pieces that we need to take care of.
Questions?
Great.
Right.
Then I'll work with board president to schedule some time on an upcoming agenda. Also, one piece to make note of, I'll work with the board president as well. I was informed that on March 6th, also a meeting night, I believe, for us, those who were involved in rendering life-saving aid to our person who actually works at our games, but and you had all the first responders come as well as our survivor of having a cardiac event. Those responders, as well as there was one additional responder who was not identified that evening, I think the chaos of that evening, but they will be receiving a Citizens Award that night. So if no one's opposed, I'll work with our board president to make sure we have a tight agenda that evening so we can go over and be part of recognizing many of our staff members who were part of that. So if that's okay, I'd like to do that as well. And just make sure we're managing our agenda that night so that we can go over and be part of that recognition as they receive those recognitions.
Any concerns, questions?
Great.
All right, we'll
Thank
work on
you.
that. Sure.
That's all I had then.
Great. All right. We're on to our discussion items. We have 2 items for discussion on our agenda tonight. First is student engagement, and Emily Melstrand has already arrived at the podium. Good evening.
All right, good evening. I want to start out just by thanking you for your time tonight. This discussion is part of our annual plan to provide updates to the board and the community regarding student engagement. And the primary focus of the conversation is really the progress being made towards our student engagement goals. And our student engagement goals focus heavily on how students, how they're progressing towards meeting the WBSD way expectations. How are our students doing at school in terms of meeting those behavioral expectations that we put forth, and how that contributes to an overall positive school community. So I'm going to start out just by kind of bringing back some conversation that we've had in the past, just to provide some context. We're going to spend a lot of time tonight talking about behavior and disciplinary action and how we respond to behavior when it happens. But I want to highlight a couple of things that were included in some of the building level presentations over the course of the past year. So disciplinary response is clearly a very important component for changing and shaping behavior. When behavior happens, there has to be a response that's corrective to help guide kids down the right path in a better direction. But that's only one part of the puzzle, right? We really want to be more comprehensive in the way that we target behavior. So targeting behavior is most effective when we are proactive in nature. So we try to find this balance between we need to have disciplinary response, and we also need to make sure that in a proactive, preventative way, we're getting in front of behavior before it happens. Because the best way to improve the behavioral, how kids are doing meeting those expectations is to prevent behavior from happening. So I want to make sure that we spend some time talking about that as well. As a system, we've been working to strengthen our systems of support so that we're able to be responsive to student needs very proactively with the intent of circumventing those big behaviors. And our primary goal is to promote a feeling of success in students when they feel like they truly belong. So when you look at this visual, what I'm trying to demonstrate or show to you here, and I've used a couple of different visuals in past conversations, but in a proactive way, when we're thinking about how we support student engagement, we start by identifying what do we need to do for all kids? What do we need to do for everybody to set them up for good success in the school environment? We need clear expectations. We need to make sure that our environments are welcoming and engaging. And we need to have practices in place that are responsive. And generally speaking, when we do that, 80 to 85% of our kids know what to do. They have the skills to do what they need to do, and they're successful. Just like learning math or reading, some kids need something more and something more targeted. So you can see in the middle there that some students, in addition to those kind of more general universal practices, they need something that's a bit more targeted. So we might have kids who are struggling to meet behavioral expectations, and our goal is to intervene and identify what they need so that they can be successful. Often that includes more targeted teaching around the skills that they need to be successful. And it's sometimes confusing because we think about behavior in a very black and white way. When you know the rule, you should be able to follow the rule. And just like learning academics, kids come to us with all kinds of different skills intact and all kinds of skills that they're learning. And that is also the case with behavior and social skills and emotional regulation. So we're going to target a bit more for some students, and then we're still going to have a couple of kids, generally 2 to 3%, who need something highly individualized. They need a plan and a program that really addresses their specific needs. And then I wanted to make sure that I highlighted that in addition to being thoughtful about how we're responding to student needs, we're also embedding professional learning and coaching throughout that continuum. So we're thinking about what our staff needs universally, what they need to be more targeted in their response, and then what they need to really support students who have high levels of need or individualization. Oops, this is a PDF, I apologize. Okay, so one of our primary proactive strategies for promoting student engagement is we want kids to want to be at school. And Mr. Groff said this a few minutes ago, that we're really working to make kids feel like they're connected to the school community and that they belong. All people do best when they feel like they're connected and they belong, and that is certainly true of our students. So we are working hard to promote that sense of belonging so that kids feel safe, so that they feel engaged. And when they do that, they're able to be their best selves, both academically and in their behavior. One of our primary strategies works through our WBSD way, and that really focuses on clarifying clear universal expectations. Our kids need to know the rules. They need to know the expectations in different environments, and so do our teachers, because our teachers need to know how to hold kids accountable in a really proactive and productive way so that kids are meeting those expectations. We've talked a lot about the importance of welcoming environments, engaging environments. If kids are highly engaged, they're more likely to meet the behavioral expectations. We've talked about optimistic closures. I know you've heard that through a variety of discussions and reports. And again, that's that idea of closing the day or closing a lesson by identifying what worked, what our next goals are. And it's also that idea of, today might have been hard, but tomorrow's a new day and we're going to do better. So that idea of really facilitating welcoming environments. One of the things I did want to mention that just kind of reinforces the importance of this for me and for all of my fellow educators. There's lots of conversation happening right now around mental health in students. And I know that you're all very familiar with that. But the Office of Children's Mental Health recently recognized trends of increased anxiety and depression in children. And one of the things that was highlighted in that report is the importance of social connectedness, and that kids who are deeply connected at school, in sports, in co-curriculars, we heard our students tonight talk about some of the amazing work happening at the high school level. Those strategies really promote resiliency through some of those difficult times. Some of the primary factors identified in that report talked about the importance of family connection. And one of our really important driving strategies this year has been increasing our connectedness to families around student behavior, how we're communicating and how we're engaging families in plans. Another one was supportive adults who are non-family members. I mean, kids need to have other people in their lives who are connecting them and lifting them through hard times. Peer relationships, and then student engagement. Those were some of the 4 top pillars identified within that report around mental health for children. I do just want to mention, and I think this is, when I heard the high school students speaking earlier tonight, I thought a lot about this. One of the things that we're trying to be really thoughtful and intentional about is not just the connectedness within the classroom setting, but how do we ensure that kids are being connected to our co-curriculars and our athletics? And I've been doing some work with the Badger team and the counseling team. They're really identifying who are our kids. I mean, you think about the visual I showed you just a minute ago. Universally, when we offer athletics and co-curricular signups to most kids, 80 to 85% of our kids are going to go, they're going to sign up, and they're going to join what they want to join. But we're going to have kids who need us to build that connection for them. And we've been working really hard to identify some of our kids who are more at risk to struggle at the high school level and say, hey, what do you want to do next year? And maybe it's football, but you've never been on a team. So I'm not just going to tell you how to sign up. I'm going to introduce you to the football coach, and I'm going to let him know that this is what this student needs to be successful in this team. And you know what? For a while, he might need the team more than the team needs him. And that's okay because that kid's connected. We're doing the same thing with extracurriculars. I spent time a couple weeks ago trying to convince a young man that he should join one of the athletic teams at the high school, and he finally looked at me and said, I really like photographs. Like, I like digital photographs. So our intention is we're going to connect you to Mr. Bentall and Mr. Johnson at the high school, so you got a couple people looking out for you when you get there. So I just wanted to highlight that it's much deeper than what's happening in the classroom. It's also what's happening outside of the classroom that keeps kids connected. Okay, oops. I apologize. So who supports this work? We are super fortunate in West Bend because our school board and our administrative team has been very supportive of our student services team. But I think it's really important that we know and understand that the work of supporting student engagement is everybody's work. It's our administrators, our teachers, our paraprofessionals, it's clerical staff, it's everybody. We all play a role in making kids feel welcome. And a quick little caveat, my team here at ESC, I know some of you are very aware of this, but we educate about 70 to 80 kids in this building every single day. And we sometimes forget, because this is an office building, but this is also a school to a handful of kids in our district. And in working with a student several weeks ago, we were kind of working through this idea of engagement. And in a hard situation, and for this student in particular, he misses the bus a lot. And what could you do in those mornings when you miss the bus? Who are your people that you depend on? And he named Cindy at the front desk as one of his people. And that really resonated for me. It's not just about the principal in the building and the teacher in the classroom and the coach. It's the food service people, it's our custodial staff, it's every single person who has the ability to impact how a student feels about being in our schools. So in addition to that, I have some of my team members here. I have our administrative team from the middle and high school levels. John Groff was courteous enough to stay on behalf of elementary, and I want you to know that they're here if you have specific questions about those particular levels. In addition to that, Carrie Hughes is here. She is a student services coordinator, and she is somebody who does a heavy lift in relationship to the WBSD way work. Amy Carver is also here. I think she's tucked behind me. Amy is our behavioral coach, and that was a new position added this year. And I want to share a little bit about the work that she's been doing because it's been pretty instrumental in terms of professional learning and coaching around individual needs of students. In addition to that, School Counselor Week, we have 17 counselors. We have 13 family liaisons who work on those wraparound services and supports to families. We are super fortunate in that we have a school psychologist in every single building in our district, and we also have a school nurse or health room professional. And you might wonder, well, why are they on this list? Well, I'm going to tell you, the individuals who work in our health rooms are often the first layer of response for kids that are struggling. And I think Amy Brager said when she was here last summer, they don't just do Band-Aids. Those individuals do a lot of work to support kids. I have 2 special education or student service coordinators. We have a behavior technician. We were fortunate to add a multilingual family engagement specialist, and that really came out of some of our work around disproportionality. And one of her primary focuses is to ensure that our families of English language learning students are deeply connected in our school, in addition to multiple other things. And then our WBSD Way team members, the coaches who support that work, and our community partners. We've got some pretty amazing community partners. And first and foremost, our families. I mean, this is a collaboration with families in addition to staff. So our professional learning structure, I wanted to give you a quick overview on what this looks like. We have Amy Carver and my student service team and our counseling team. I was able to carve out some time in one of our school counselors' position. Sean Becker is helping to kind of do a lift around our mental health framework. All of those individuals have been working together to kind of align our professional learning structure. And what you see here is kind of a 5-leveled structure where we're targeting professional learning universally. What do all teachers need? How do we strengthen their toolbox of strategies? How do we help them feel like they're able to provide and create those welcoming and engaging environments? And then you can kind of see as it goes through those levels that it becomes more individualized. And what happens is it goes from that universal level to I'm going to be working with small teams who maybe need something particular to help their house or to help their grade level. I might be working with a small group of special education teachers at level 3 where we're really working around building your skill set to support students with autism. And then all the way to the intensive behavior support where Amy Carver might be working with a team to help identify what is the function of this student's behavior. Are they missing skills that we need to teach? Are there unsolved problems that are interfering with their ability to be successful? She's helping to design and then in an embedded way, help teachers feel more comfortable doing that in the absence of her, but she's helping them design behavior intervention plans. And sometimes at level 5, we might actually say our behavioral technician is gonna stay in that team for 4 to 6 weeks to support the implementation of a plan and to continue to model strategies and then exit. And sometimes we might actually say, hey, I'm going to put a sub here for a short time so my special education teacher is free to really implement this plan on behalf of this student or group of students. So with that, I just wanted to give you some information or stats on what have we been doing. We've been doing all kinds of things since last school year. My team has put together a variety of different professional learning experiences. I bucketed them into categories, and within these categories, there could be 2 courses or 8 courses offered to teachers. And the number of staff trained is really just the total number of people who have signed up and participated in those courses thus far. And I think what you see when you look at that is strong engagement from our teachers, our paraprofessionals, on wanting to develop the skills, and I shouldn't say develop, wanting to strengthen and continuously be on top of what's working for kids. I also wanted to point out the bottom two rungs identify train the trainers. We've had 10 individuals that we have had participate in some extensive training so that they can then be the trainers of. So nonviolent crisis intervention, we want to be able to train our own staff and not have to outsource that. So we've developed that within our team. And the last one really identifies some of the work that Amy Carver's been leading. Amy keeps a log and really clear records on who she's supporting and when, and she has, in the first semester of the year, interfaced with 73 different teams around the needs of kids. And I think that's pretty substantial. Okay, so I am gonna move into really looking at our data, but before I do that, I just wanted to take a beat and see if you had any questions about that first set of information.
Questions? All right.
And I actually wanted to get a drink of water. All right. So as a district, we set a district student engagement goal, and we actually had two pieces of that are kind of that represent two different ways of looking at student behavior. So the district goal is kind of like the pace setter for the system, right? This is where we want to go as a system, and all of the site goals are feeding into that. We want welcoming and engaging environments where kids feel safe emotionally and physically, and they're available to be optimal learners. And we want to do that by increasing the number of students who are responding to universal strategies. We want less kids who need targeted or very targeted support. And that's represented by an increase in the number of students who have 0 or 1 office disciplinary referrals to over 84%. And then likewise, we want to have an impact on those big behaviors. So we want to see a decrease in the number of students or the number of major office disciplinary incidents. We actually have a 20% goal over 3 years with a 9% this year and then slightly lower. But if we meet our goal, we'll modify that and shoot higher. I don't know. Okay, there. So this is just a visual, and I think this is pretty, this has been demonstrated through lots of different conversations over the course of the last year, but I just wanted to make sure that both the school board and our community recognized how our strategic planning works. And what you see here is really the fact that each of our different sites is setting their own goal in alignment with that district goal, and that really feeds and supports our progress towards our district goal. So what I'd like to do now is jump into some of our behavior. Before I do that, I just want to comment on the fact that one of the areas that we've been working really hard on as an administrative team, in conjunction with our family liaisons and our school counselors, is working on how we calibrate our data. We've spent a lot of time putting together a guide book or a process that our administrators are using to determine how they're coding behavior and what level of behavior different incidents are rated as. And it's really important that we do that because we want it to align with state and federal requirements. And I got to tell you, I'm really proud of our administrative team. I review that data monthly in my office. I send out a monthly report. We're doing quarterly validation. And I can tell you that our data is so much cleaner than it was a year ago in terms of consistency of response. So when we look at major behaviors for the entire district, we have seen almost a 15% decrease from this time last year to end of first semester of this year. And the first visual just shows month by month how we're trending. The red bar is 2021-22, the gray bar is the current year. And you can see that we're consistently trending in the right direction as a system.
And the other, go back, there you go. 22, 23 doesn't mean, that means the end of the year.
Right.
So
it's
just for
January.
public, yeah, it doesn't mean 22 box is the first part of the year and we've had 2,700 in the last couple of months. So just to clarify, you're using the end of year.
I am.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, and it's point in time. So I really looked at September through January 31st of last year in comparison to the same time frame for this year. I did want to do that after pulling out our attendance information as well. So there are attendance-related incidents that filter into our behavior data. Skipping class, tardy, truancy, those are all considered major behavioral incidents, and they're really about attendance and engagement. And I actually think you're going to see a trend on this, and this is something we recognize as necessary to continue supporting. But when I take out those skipped class, truancy, and tardy incidents, we have about a 15% reduction in behavioral incidents, just over that. And I think it's important to note that 38% of our major behavior incidents are attendance related. And that directly relates to some of what I talked about earlier, where we are working with students who are struggling with anxiety, who are struggling with depression. In addition to that, we have kiddos who are struggling learners who sometimes it's avoidance. So we know as a district, we have to continue to work on getting kids to want to be at school and having the supports in place to make them feel successful when they're here. I wanted to show you our top major behaviors. You can see the blue columns identify that really encompasses all behavior, and you can see that skipped class and tardy to class are our two biggest behaviors. When you take out those attendance pieces, our most frequent behaviors are represented in the burgundy column, with disrespectful behavior being at the top of that. I wanted to show you this visual because this really looks at all behavior in the district, majors and minors. And our goal for the end of the year is that we have 84.6% of our kids with 0 to 1. We're trending in that direction. Right now we have 84.89% of all students in the district with 0 to 1 behavior. Last year at this time we were at 80.58. And again, I wanted to show you that same visual when we take out skipping, class, tardy, and truancy. All right, I'm going to jump into elementary. So elementary major behaviors by year, this is the same information that I showed at the very beginning with the district-wide lens. You can see that there's been a reduction in major behavior at the elementary level. That's right around 40% from last year, this time, to this year and this time. And the most frequent majors coded at the elementary level are listed in that table. All right, so now what you're going to see is a little bit of differentiation across the buildings. So our elementary buildings, although we are offering, consistency in education across those buildings, they each have their own individual data and their own individual needs, and they've identified their specific site goal based upon that. So Decorah was really looking to reduce behavioral incidents on the playground and in the classroom. They've identified that as their primary area where behavior is happening, and they're working to decrease that. And they've had a reduction so far this year of almost 12%. Their goal is 35%. Fair Park is looking to improve student engagement, and they're really looking to ensure that kids have strong connections with adults in the building. They're focusing on 3rd and 4th grade because those are kids who've been in the building for a little bit longer, and then they're working to extend that down to first and second grade. 90 of their 97 students have reported a connection with 4 or more staff members. The remaining 7 kiddos, they're working with families and those students to ensure that they're deeply connected. And they've also used this as a strategy for staff engagement, because there's no better compliment for a teacher than to know they've made the difference in the life of a student, and to be identified by your students as somebody that you feel safe and connected to is pretty impactful. Our other 3 elementary schools have goals that align with our district goal, where they're really looking to increase the number of students meeting these school expectations at 0 to 1 incidents. And you can see next to the arrow, that's their target for the end of the year, and their current level of performance is highlighted in yellow. And last year's data is reflected just above the yellow bar. And you can see right now all three elementary schools are trending in a great direction. McLean has set the bar high with 97%, and they have 93% of their students meeting that. Okay, moving on to Silverbrook Intermediate School. Silverbrook has a very comparable goal where they're looking to increase the number of students meeting school-wide expectations. And this graph is the same, so we're looking at the same type of information. Their end-of-year performance in 2021-22 was 76.72%. Their goal on the year is 82%, and they right now are trending at 85%. I did want to show you Silverbrook's major behavior by year. So this is looking at those major behavioral incidents, and you can see that they have made a reduction of major behavioral incidents. And I also demonstrate there for you what their top behaviors are. I did not remove attendance-related behaviors from their data because it is not significant at the 5th and 6th grade level. We start to see an uptick in that as kids move into Badger, but it wasn't relevant to pull that data out. Okay, so moving on to Badger Middle School. Badger Middle School has set their school-wide goal. They're really working hard on decreasing the number of major behavioral incidents. So they're working on an increase of students who have 0 to 1 major behavior incidents. Their goal is 85%, and they are trending in that direction. They've made growth from last year where they were at 79.83%. As of today, they're at 87.16%. And then I wanted to show you a couple other visuals supporting or giving you a clearer picture of some of the things that we're working to support at Badger. So you're going to notice in the red bar slide that really captures all major behavior in their building. So they've had an increase in major behaviors in their building when we are including attendance-related incidents. The blue graph is showing when I pull out skipping class and tardy for school or tardy for class, you can see that there's a 15% reduction in the behaviors. And I think that's really relevant because, again, it's reinforcing that notion of being at school and being at school on time and being in class are some of our primary areas of focus. I apologize. I don't know why every now and then I can't get it to flip to the next slide. So Badger Middle School data just kind of unpacked or broken down. Again, the first graph is showing the most frequent major behavior types. And you can see here, this is where we start to trend in the direction of tardy to class, skip to class are at the top of that list. That actually accounts for 49% of all major behavioral incidents at Badger. When we pull them out, what you see are the top 4 behaviors. And I wanted to show you the change from last year. And I think this is really important because we are seeing a reduction in the number of disrespectful behaviors insubordination, and physical contacts. And you can see the percentage of change. And we've seen an uptick in some of the disruptive behavior. All right, jumping to East and West High School. The primary goal, as is the case at every building, we're working to decrease the number of kids who need more to meet the school expectations. But they've been really focusing on increasing students' feeling of safety and security at the school. They're measuring that with their senior survey, and they last year had 50% of students saying that they felt very safe and very secure, and we really need that number to increase. Some of their action steps focus on increasing the number of students meeting school-wide expectations. They're focusing hard on increasing meaningful connections between students and staff. They have a commitment to creating welcoming and engaging environments. And number 4 is going to kind of feed into our next couple of slides. Our high school administrative team is working really hard with their building leadership team and their staff to identify what are the areas at risk for higher behavior and how are we putting in active supervisory plans to support that so we decrease the likelihood of behavior. So visually, I want to just show you again, just like the other slides, how many students at East and West are meeting that expectation, district-wide expectation of having one or less minor or major behavior. And when we look at all of the data, including the attendance data, over 86% of our students are doing what they need to do. And I think that's really important to remind ourselves that we have a lot of kids who come to school every single day and they execute that well. When we take out those attendance-related behaviors, the number of students meeting expectations is just over 90%. So same visual as you have seen in prior connected to the other buildings. East and West, all of their major behaviors, there's been a 26% reduction since this time last year. When you take out the attendance, you see that that reduction is less, right? And you remember at Badger, it was a little bit different. Here, when we take out the attendance-related behaviors, it's about a 2% reduction. But I wanted to highlight a couple of things related to this, and I'm actually going to jump forward and then I'll jump back. I unpacked this data in lots of different ways, and I really thought about, well, why is that happening? Why aren't we seeing as much of a drop in behavior at that level? And it was interesting because as I really unpacked it, what I saw is kind of a pattern of the administrative team with their building leadership team is working to identify what do we need to target? What's the low-hanging fruit that we can shift quickly to make a difference in our school culture? And of course, we want to focus on the big behavior, but the reality is we need to promote that culture of this is the expectation and we need you to follow the expectation, even if it's the smaller expectations. So they've really focused this year on the dress code and personal technology. And having your cell phone out in class or causing disruption with that. And what you can see in this data is we have lots of major behavioral incidents related to personal technology and dress code. You can see the increase because we're really specifically targeting that. What I felt really good about in terms of the work that's happening up there is you can see a decrease in some of those really big behaviors. And of course, I want kids to put their cell phones away, but I much prefer to see physical contacts down by 56% and personal tech violations up if that's what we're targeting. So then I'm going to back up real quick, maybe. These are the most frequent major behavior types with and without attendance incidents included in that. And you can see again that 40% of major behavior is coded as skipping, tardy, or truant. And then I'll just show you this visual again. I wanted to highlight a couple of behaviors that I know are important for us to be thoughtful about. Our incidents related to prohibited substances, tobacco, drugs, and alcohol. We continue to focus on that as a district on behalf of our kids and wanting them to be safe. That is decreasing, and I will tell you again, our high school administrators have really put some good supervisory action plans in place, and they're proactively addressing this.
Can I
Yeah,
interject?
absolutely.
I didn't get to sneak it into mine. I know we put it out in the news, but when you talk about not only our efforts, but our community efforts in this arena, Moraine Park is hosting all through February a series around fentanyl overdoses, power of substance use and abuse, and responding and solutions. They also have Hidden in Plain Sight bedroom. If you've not participated in that, it's touring a life-size exhibit of a teen's bedroom with red flags that could signal any kind of drug or alcohol use. The bedroom identifies areas where teens may hide drugs, household items that could be used as paraphernalia, and ways they might try and hide their use. That's sponsored by Moraine Park, Washington County, Elevate, Aurora Healthcare, Freightert. That is every week in February. So week 1 is passed. That was February 2nd around fentanyl. February 9th is kind of the how and why around that. So we'll continue to promote that in every avenue for anyone in our community to attend.
And just to take on to that, I also think it's relevant to mention that we have a couple of our high school staff members, teachers, who are actually teaching teachers about some of these specific topics. So they're actually partnering with our West Bend Police Department, and that's been an awesome partnership. So Detective Stacy Bruss has been coming in and working with a couple of high school staff to present to our high school staff on how to notice and recognize signs of substance abuse and use. So really kind of trying to make sure people know what to look for. We're also working as a district on an upcoming AODA grant through the Department of Public Instruction. So, looking to access additional resources through them.
Alcohol and other drugs.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Those who
Thank
don't
you.
know.
You're good about remembering that, Jen. All right. Oops. Okay, so this is a visual I've shown before. I just want to show this one more time because I want to just kind of highlight the fact that, there's different levels of disciplinary action. Sometimes it's just teacher handled, it's focused on redirection and reteaching. That's a level 1, and it moves through a level 4. Sometimes when students are struggling repeatedly, it might move slowly across those levels, and we're intervening throughout the way. And sometimes one behavioral incident moves a student from level 1 to level 4. Level 4 is where we're really looking at more significant consequences like expulsion. And I am going to tell you, and I know I said this last year, but I think it's really important. Most of the time, and I have the data here in front of me, 56% of all of our major referrals in the entire district, 56% of them are 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. These are kids who are 12, 13, and 14 years old. And these are also sometimes, most frequently, the students that I'm dealing with who've made a quick move from level 1 to level 4. And our primary goal is always going to be to protect the learning environment. There are consequences when you do the wrong thing or you're not meeting those expectations. But we work really, really hard to find ways to get those kids back on the right path. When I said we educate 70 to 80 kids in this building, often those are kids that we've removed from the school environment pre-expulsion hearing, trying to get them back on the right track and to intervene really carefully and individually. That process can be short. Sometimes we're removing kids for a short period of time and we're working them right back into the building. And sometimes that's a long process. Sometimes that's a year removal or more, and sometimes it results in an expulsion hearing. But I wanted to highlight that because I think it's really important that we remember disciplinary action's a really important part of the puzzle, but so is what we do to support kids. And when I'm thinking about kids being 12, 13, and 14 years old, I'm not going to give up on our middle schoolers. I want them to graduate from our system. I want them to be contributing members in this community. They're often the kids who stay in this community, and I have been appreciative of our administrative team and this board because you've allowed us to invest heavily in the supports around those students. I did want to highlight for you the most frequent disciplinary actions throughout the system. I know that that's information that was important the last time we spoke about this. And you'll see that I put an asterisk by conference with parent because I didn't want that to be misleading. Our administrative team is working really hard this year to connect with parents around any major behavioral incident. But sometimes we actually get to a point where we say, okay, we've reached out, but now we want you to come in and we need you to be a part of this really intensive plan for a student. So when it says conference with parent, that's really that next layer. It's not just the phone call, I want to let you know this happened. It's, hey, can you come in and help us work on a plan around your students' needs. I'm almost to the end, I promise you. Student discipline, I did want to just show you comparatively last year to this year. You know, when I think about our least, I always think about least restrictive to most restrictive. Our most restrictive discipline for students really is suspension and expulsion. And I did want you to see kind of where we're at in that. Our out-of-school suspensions are slightly lower. Our in-school suspensions are more significantly lower, but you know that's a tool we use when we need to use it, but we're also very thoughtful about when suspending kids, particularly kids who are struggling to get to school, sometimes has a counterproductive approach, so we're really trying to be thoughtful about that. We've had a decrease in disciplinary hearings, and those are those kind of pre-expulsion hearings. We have a decrease in off-site placements this year. I did want to mention, these are kind of notes to myself, but one of the things that I would encourage community members and parents to be thoughtful about is really to be supporting your kids and understanding what things you can bring to school and what things you cannot. We do have, kids who are showing up with laser pointers. Things that they're disruptive in the school environment and we need parents to help keep those at home. We've had some kids showing up with like multi-tools. And I understand if you work at a farm or you work in Menards, you might have that in your backpack or your pocket, but you can't bring that to school. So we've had a little bit of an uptick on that type of thing, and I just want parents to be thoughtful and aware of that. I said this last year and I'll say it again, we've had less cyber-related incidents where kids are using powerful words on social media and not realizing the impact at school. That's going down, but I still want to encourage folks to be working with kids around safe and productive use of social media. I've already mentioned some of these things, but some of our primary supportive practices have been a strong focus on parent and guardian engagement. Our high school team, in addition to really working on supervisory work, supervisory plans, they've also put together they're working on their multi-tiered system of support, but they have a high school problem-solving team that meets weekly where we really look at our most at-risk kids and respond on behalf of them weekly. Amy Carver has been doing a phenomenal job supporting teams around really proactive and individualized behavior plans. And I already mentioned the work we've been doing around calibrated disciplinary coding. So what are our priorities for second semester? You probably guessed it. Attendance and truancy is something we are working hard on. We're working on some supportive practices that really seek to identify why kids are struggling to be at school or be in class. And that aligns with the work we're doing around our mental health framework. We're trying to make sure that kids have pathways to the supports and services they need if mental health is a factor in attendance. We continue to work on sustainability of those universal strategies and increasing welcoming environments. Continuing professional learning with our staff. I talked about the parent engagement and partnerships. And the other thing I want to mention, we're also working really hard to get students more engaged in the process. The high school is really eliciting their feedback and input around disciplinary practices and school-wide expectations. And likewise, when kids are struggling, we're asking them why. And that seems like a really simple thing, but you would be shocked and in awe of some of the insightful things that a struggling student might say in response to why are you not getting to class. And I'll just give you a quick example because I think sometimes that highlights it. I've had a couple situations where kids are late for class and late for class and late for class, and we've responded with a detention and other disciplinary responses. And when we sat down and really unpacked that, I had a young man say to us, I'm late for these 3 classes because those are 3 classes where he had identified most of the kids were maybe struggling learners, and he was not going to walk in that class and have people believe he struggled. And so until we could solve that problem for him, his ability to be in class at time wasn't going to change because of a detention. And so I think that's really important that we're talking to kids and we're asking questions, and they're contributing to setting their own goals and their path forward. So I know that was a lot of information, and I hope I captured the things that you were looking to hear about. We have an annual board report timeline around student engagement. We presented in August around our strategic plan and a preview on seclusion and restraint. We did the seclusion and restraint report in November. I had indicated I would come here and do our student engagement report mid-year. We're going to do it end of year, and I'd like to move that seclusion and restraint report to July so that we can close off this year's data before we roll into next school year. So I want to thank you, first of all, for your attention to all of that information. I'm happy to field questions, and I also have my administrative team and some of my student services folks here if there's something specific you're looking to learn more about.
Okay, great, thank you. Questions?
I have some.
John, go ahead.
I guess I'm just, as you were going through, and not discounting anything you gave us here, but I think we're missing just a slight key piece of data between the year comparisons. When we compare the years, we're giving a percentage of total reduction, but I don't know if it doesn't look like we're taking into account for student enrollment deductions or reductions. So we're comparing the numbers from this year to last year, getting major behaviors, 26% reduction, but we could be down 14% of the students. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
So I don't know if, you
It's a
can
variable we
capture
should
that.
consider.
We can capture that somewhere, and, just might be a little bit more in depth of.
How impactful is enrollment on that data?
Right. Because it still could be, you know what I'm saying? If we have 2,000
Absolutely.
students, we have 1,778 incidents, but now we have 1,700 students and 1,300. It might be the same number per year. We might be having the same amount of incidents per capita, if you will, so.
And
Other
I don't
questions?
actually know off the top of my head what our reduction in student enrollment was over the course of the last year, so absolutely.
Great. Other questions? Oh,
Yeah.
gone forward.
Sorry, because so when we pull that data on the one graph that showed you the 0 to 1, that is actually pulled based on your current enrollment. Does that make sense? So yes, it might look a little bit different, but it should adjust year to year because it's in our student information system. Does that make sense? Am I answering that?
I just see actual numbers compared, and if you calculate those out, that is the number you have.
Right.
So I don't see that how 1,308 and 1,778, is an actual 26% reduction compared to the actual percentage of incidents per student.
I see what you're saying.
Okay.
To make sure and highlight those pieces.
Yeah.
We'll-
And I'm
yeah,
just
I
saying,
can
it just might,
Okay.
be
I was
another piece of
thinking of
accuracy
that
that
other
we can
graph,
grab.
and I'm like, well, that's based off.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're thinking of, I know which
Yep.
one you're thinking of.
Yeah,
This
that one. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely, I'm following you.
Great. Questions? Other observations?
When we had our discussion with our local police and fire department and our chiefs, talking about school safety, they, both of the chiefs of West Bend and Jackson
kind of told us that the biggest threat to a major safety incident would be someone within our own school, someone we know, meaning a student potentially or a former student. And so I think it was on slide number 4, just all of the people in this district who are connecting with students. And that includes obviously parents and community partners, but school counselors and liaisons and psychologists connecting with students. Personally, I think plays a huge role in just the overall safety of our building. Trying to identify, a loner, someone who's not connected, someone who doesn't want to come to school, but then these are the people that are really diving in to figure out why. And so I know we were talking more about behaviors and referrals, but on, from a major safety situation, I just applaud this team and all of our staff really who are connecting with our students every day to try to identify, what's going on in these students' lives that will make them want to come to school and be to class on time and be active participants. The one slide you talked about, their students, 90% of students have 4 or more staff members who they feel connected to. And if you're pulling a 4th grader, they may say, well, I feel connected to my 3rd grade teacher and my 4th grade teacher. That's 2, but also the custodian gives me a high five every time I pass them in the hallway. And that student might consider that custodian to be the 3rd person that they connect with. Or the bus driver smiles at me every time I get in and off of the bus, and that's a connection for that kid. And so I want to applaud the not just everybody on this list, but all of our staff, teachers, bus drivers, community partners who play a major role in making our kids feel connected. I love the West Bend School District way. I love going into Riverside Brewery is one of my favorite restaurants.
And it's everywhere,
and that is right in front of the door when you walk in. And I notice it. My kids obviously notice it and know that this is a place that cares about, the kids in our community and in our schools. So anyway, I'm proud of the team. I'm proud of these results. We're trending in the right direction as far as behaviors go. And this was a great presentation. It was long. There's a lot in here, but it was all very well done, and just wanted to thank you and all of our team that play the major role in these accomplishments.
Thank you, Joel. And I wanted to mention, as you were speaking, it made me think of something. We're all concerned about, we identify potential risks. And I didn't mention this, but our team has been working really hard. And again, I'm really proud of our site administrators and our student service people at the site level, because we've implemented a pretty extensive process, a threat assessment process, where we're really investigating and unpacking potential risks. And we don't just respond when it's a small risk, big risk. We're responding to, things kids say, things kids post on social media, and we're unpacking that through this process and determining next steps. And it takes time, but we want our kids to be safe for sure. And the other thing I just need to reinforce that you said, you're right. It's the bus driver, it's the clerical person. And for me personally, it's super heartwarming when a kid says to me, Cindy at the front desk is someone who cares about me. Because Cindy's role at the front desk is human resources related, and she's impacted a kid. And that's the job of everybody in this system. So thank you for highlighting that.
I appreciated the additional discussion that you had around what I'm going to call kind of the root cause. I think it's important for us to remember that sometimes if there are behavior issues, maybe detention is a very effective way to discipline, and other times detention isn't going to help at all. So I appreciate the fact that you're taking time to kind of dissect this, because that's more of an art, I think, than a science. And so if there are trends in that, I think that's something the board would be interested in the future.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next is policy first reading discussion, and I believe Superintendent Wimmer, you're going to walk us through that?
Yes, our team met last Tuesday and are advancing the following policies for just a first reading. I've bracketed those by those that were just reviewed. There's no recommendations for change. They were up to date, both emergency nursing services as well as school wellness. Reminder that school wellness also has a whole committee. There's certain aspects that they have to hit. Our policies up to date and reflects that. Policies that are have recommendations for revision, and I've kind of highlighted in the parens if it's a minor adjustment, if it's a full content, so we can kind of dig into those. But just looking at 424, participation of non-public school students in district courses, programs, or activities. So some revisions for that. 453, student healthcare services, just a minor edit. There was a statute embedded within the policy. Those are actually referenced at the end of a policy. The automated external defibrillators, just updating title and a massive update on the content in that one. Again, reflecting our current practice. It was just outdated. 453.3, communicable diseases and bloodborne pathogens. We updated the title, the contents, and made sure to call out the two sections that were different, communicable disease as well as bloodborne pathogens. That's at the end there. And then infectious disease, pandemic flu, just a minor edit. We removed, there was a lot of policy references about homework regarding student attendance. Those actually sit somewhere else in policy, so we removed that cross-reference. 453.4, student medication. We've got some recommended revisions there, as well as student allergies. The content was the same. We added headers for easier reading, and those are in green. Just the nuance between, a latex allergy is a general allergy environment, those kinds of pieces. We also have discussion at policy around what the practice is behind that. So if you're ever interested beyond the language to watch those videos, we talk about what it looks like in practice too. Animals in classrooms, just a minor update. It did not say working with the principal in there regarding that, and that was a piece. And then student fees. Student fees, you'll see 470 I have for removal. It was labeled wrong, it's sitting in the wrong series, and it was more the practice of, and we really updated that language. Again, student fees are something that come before the board annually for approval. Our policy language reflects that, but it's most appropriately labeled 656 student fees to go into its appropriate section, 600 series around finances. And then noting the removal, 452 wellness, it was almost a duplicate. It was student wellness in addition to school wellness, as well as the 470 I just referenced. So again, first reading moving forward from the team. If there's any questions, we're happy to connect.
This was the first reading. We won't take action on these, but if there are questions, thoughts, observations. All right, hearing none, we'll bring them forward on the next agenda for second reading. Thank you. We move now to action items. First action item, 2022-2023 certified staff negotiations. I believe Mr. Lenny Hansen and Mr. Andy Sarno are going to walk us through that. Gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening. Each year, the district engages in base wage negotiations with the West Bend Education Association. We did so again recently regarding the compensation for 2022 through 2023, so the current year that we are in. We had some really great discussions through several negotiation sessions, really respectful and cordial and innovative ideas being shared back and forth. This year, we were not able to come to a full agreement on terms around base wage negotiations, and therefore we would move that the board declare an impasse in those negotiations. That was a mutually agreed upon outcome. Working with the WBEA, we both really felt that while we had yielded good productive discussion, that we were at an impasse this year. Declaring an impasse, if you do so, would then lead us into the next agenda item, which is where we would then move forward with compensation increases for the current school year. So at this point, unless you have anything else to share, the administration would recommend a motion to declare that impasse, which is required under the terms and statutes of the law for how negotiations proceed.
Questions, discussion?
I will motion to declare an impasse in the 2022-2023 base wage negotiations between the West Bend School District and the West Bend Education Association.
I'll second. We have a motion and second to declare an impasse in 2022-2023 base wage negotiations between the district and the West Bend Education Association. Any final discussion?
I just want to thank Andy and Lenny, and I want to thank the members of the West Bend Education Association for the time and effort that goes into this. Obviously, we've come at an impasse, which we'll vote on here in a minute, but it does take a lot of time and effort, and I'm sure a lot of emotions that go into this, and just want to thank both sides for the effort and hard work.
Thank you.
All right, I will call the roll. Ms. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Swigert votes yes. Ms. Aragot is absent. Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Ms. Justman?
Yes.
Mr. Ungert?
Yes.
Mr. Rebholz?
Yes.
All right, that motion carries. So we'll move then to the next agenda item, which is 2022-2023 employee compensation.
This topic involves compensation increases, annual pay raises for all employee groups. This item comes forth to the board annually as well after negotiations take place. Again, negotiations that you just discussed relate to certified staff, but we have lots of different employee groups, all of which are represented in the various 5 documents as presented. This is later than typical for us to bring forward compensation increases. We're very well aware, as we've heard at many board meetings, around the significant impact that inflation has had on all families, including our employees, and we've recognized how important it is to continue to drive up our wages to meet the needs of employees so that we can recruit and retain excellent staff and continue to do that. So this is later than usual, but we really wanted to do a very deep analysis of not just this current year's budget, but future budgets. As we've talked about many times at this podium before, we're really in an unusual, unprecedented position in terms of flat revenues from the state for multiple years running, as well as quite a bit of uncertainty around where the state budget will be in the next 2 years. So a lot of work was done by the finance team, the entire cabinet team, to analyze that and be able to bring forth pay raises for our staff that also ensure a balanced budget this year, as well as confidence in delivering a balanced budget next year. The items here all fall within the total expenditure budget at the start of the year. So we've definitely analyzed where things have moved as the year has progressed, and we come into this evening today really confident in these proposals here and our ability to continue to deliver on that balanced budget promise that we have to our community.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Nope, you first.
You did mention a couple of times that this is a little bit later than normal. However, I do want to point out that if approved, all of these are retroactive back to July 1st of 2022.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. They are retroactive back to the start of the fiscal year, and that's typical every year of how we handle compensation increases that take place after July 1. Thanks for mentioning that.
No, my question was just going to be in something that you had already identified. Actually, we had an eloquent speaker tonight who said, or who asked about additional raises, and I think you touched on the fact with regard to revenue, because if, for instance, let's say we wanted to give a 6% raise, and let's just tax more so we can get to that 6%. Maybe, I don't know, maybe this is a Mr. Sarno question, but just to talk about, just to, educate our community around that, because there are some there are some parameters here that put us into a pretty tight box.
That is. So when we set our final levy at the end of October, we are taxing to our maximum allowable authority revenue limits. This is the 30th year of revenue limits. They were thought to be in place within about 5 years, dating back to 1993. We will address it at that point when districts are struggling, but we are taxing to our maximum allowable authority, the revenue limits put in place. We don't have that option. So unless there was other new revenues that became available that we could be able to put towards this, that's not an option at this point without reprioritizing some other expenditures.
Nancy?
Because I have 5 meetings left, I will say this at least 5 more times. And for those listening at home, I don't think, I'll speak for myself as a board member, I would love to be able to meet the level of inflation that everyone is experiencing. I value our staff tremendously here, but we do not have that authority without a massive change in Madison about the revenue limits. So as we are all scratching our heads saying, how do we help our teachers to have a wage that at least meets inflation, or that they can do some of the things that they spoke about in last meetings. I think it's critical that you all listen closely and you call your legislators who are going to Madison every day and you discuss the revenue limit. I do not believe that a revenue limit is feasible to be in place for 30 years. That is ridiculous. Who in their right mind would think that 30 years worth of inflation could, that you could just keep your limits at the same level? It's insane. But yet that's what our legislators are forcing this community and many others like us to do. So, as many of you have concerns about this, the only way to change this, you can come here and talk to us as school board members until you are blue in the face, and you can talk to administrators as well. It is out of our control. This is a statewide problem that we have. So give Rick Gundrum and the rest of your legislators a jingle and ask them what they're doing about it, because that's where the problem lies.
Thank you, Nancy. Other thoughts, questions? Kurt?
I just have some thoughts as being the treasurer of the board, just seeing the numbers, as Andy said, it's we're in a little box situation, hurt more by declining enrollment, while our other expenses are going up as well, health insurance, you name them. So we're in a box. We're able to find some money or redirect some money, take from other places and put in more. I'm in favor of giving staff at least a raise to inflation, and we came close, but weren't able to get there. So that's why I think the impasse is there. I will just say, I urge us as a board. I agree with Nancy's comments. That's one thing that can help. The other thing is we have to look at our facilities, our infrastructure, and try to find more money. And I urge us to start that now, because the budgeting cycle is a 12-month year round. We're already planning for next year with approving our expenses for next year. So I will just say I'm voting for this. I'm at least happy to give, I believe it's the largest raise in 12 years for our staff as a percent, but no, many of it doesn't match the inflation number, but it comes close, so.
Any other discussion? Otherwise, the plan is the plan that was included in our board materials. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's, and the motion's a little long because there's 5 different pieces there to be individually mentioned.
Just glancing down for my.
I guess one item I'll just add, this past summer, we implemented a coach, a 9-12 coach compensation model, which was sorely needed. And you'll see coach compensation listed as one of the pieces there. So individuals who already received a raise as part of some of those summer adjustments are not included in this. It's kind of already there. But I am proud to say that, athletics and co-curricular raises are on the board there. That's one that for many years the district has failed to kind of keep up, and it's kind of sat at the same level. And we know how much those coaches and co-curricular advisors give of time and energy, and we're making sure that we continue to honor that.
All right. I will move to approve the 2022-2023 compensation increases for eligible certified staff, support staff, administrators, food service staff, coaches, and co-curricular staff as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Joel, for the second. So this is a motion to approve the 22-23 compensation increases as presented. Any final discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Rebholz?
Yes.
Ms. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Ongert?
Yes.
Ms. Erickott is absent. Ms. Justman?
Yes.
Mr. Swiger votes yes. And Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Great. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will move to policy second reading for review. More policy. Superintendent Wimmer?
We actually had this as an action item because policy development allows you to take action if you have unanimous vote from the board. With Melanie Ergott's absence tonight, we don't have that opportunity, so I'll just present this as a second reading. We had some questions about one, so I'll get into that as we go. But if you look at the second reading, we had those buckets. There's the first, recommended for review, no changes in those policies. 455.2, the parking, awards, and scholarships. Any questions or comment? Okay. In revision, we had everything from the renumbering of the high school configuration to a couple in the 300 series from Start College Now that was around eligibility for coursework that kids are signing up for now. That's why we had that taken out of numerical order there. And then the remainder in the 400 series around different programs that we have. Any questions on those? Right. And the last one was recommendation for removal. We had some public comment regarding the one around nepotism, regarding the statutes that guide this, the pieces around policy on that. While we could speak do some preliminary, I want to unpack what those questions and comments were. There was some data kind of why the policy was there. I recommend that I get that information and bring it forward for discussion and review at the next board meeting, specifically around nepotism. I thought there were some statistics that were shared that we would, I'm sure, want to look at as a board as you move forward with that policy. If you have any other questions in addition to what was shared, I know we had some questions around the statutes and unpacking that. Just let me know and we'll make sure to include that to update you and to bring that forward for the full board prior to consideration. And then the other school-age parents, that content was not necessary, as well as insurance and accidents. Those were separated. They're in other areas or they're covered under standard pieces. So any questions around the others that are recommended for removal?
I'll just say, so I had a chat with Lenny. He had shared some of the stuff on the nepotism. I don't know, that'd probably be beneficial to share with the rest of the board, I would think.
Sure, we can do that now.
I didn't know if the
We can.
verbiage, the new verbiage on the stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
We won't have some of the data pieces or those, and we're more than happy to get those and do that. But go ahead.
Okay, so there's really two pieces to this. There is nepotism as it relates to board members, and then there's nepotism as it relates to employees. So we got legal counsel from multiple places here. We talked to the Wisconsin Association of School Board legal counsel as well as our own. Generally, you're seeing nepotism for employees fall within employee handbook. For a variety of reasons. So that's one of the reasons, for example, the numbering on this current policy it's not in alignment with WASB's numbering. It was kind of a custom written policy. So we actually are moving all of the restrictions and prohibitions for employees around nepotism over to the handbook as soon as the board would move to approve this policy. And actually, we actually made it a little bit even more expansive to make it even more restrictive. Added a few more relations that we thought should be included, that someone shouldn't be involved in the hiring, recommendation, supervision, and so forth. So from the employee side, we're just moving it to the handbook and probably beefing it up a little bit. From the board member side, we received a lot of interesting advice from council. So board members, all of you probably want to know this, are very restricted from engaging in any kind of nepotism as an elected official. In fact, board members can face both civil and criminal charges for engaging in nepotism under statute. So there's quite a bit of strength there already for elected officials. There was also concern from legal counsel when we shared the policy with them, which again was kind of a custom home written one, that the language was so vague that it could really restrict a board member from engaging in most of the work of the board, in which case, if the board were to try to carry out the restrictions on another board member, that it may not be legal because you may be infringing on that individual board member's right as a representative of the public to use their First Amendment speech rights. So the recommendation from both WASB and our legal counsel was rely on what's in statute, which is significant, it's clear, and it's very strict for what board members are restricted from participating in terms of family members. Use the statute for board members and move the employee pieces over to handbook, which is our plan.
Questions? So this is something we're not taking action on tonight, but I think that's good context as we consider this next. I know we also have a policy committee meeting, I think, between now and the next board meeting. So if it warrants, we could pick it up there before it comes back for third reading. Perfect. Great. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's see, we passed that item. So we're on to future agenda items and the board meeting calendar. Speaking of future meetings, so we have a number of meetings coming up. Starting with our policy committee, we have a meeting on February 16 and another meeting on February 23, both at 4 p.m. here at the Education Service Center. Then our curriculum committee meets on February 21, 8:30 a.m. here at the Education Service Center. And then we have board meetings on February 20, March 6, and March 20, all at 5:30 p.m. here at the Education Service Center. Please be sure to consult the public postings in case any of those times or locations may change. Any questions on the board meeting calendar? Any items for follow-up and communication? Hearing none, we have an item that's appropriate for executive session, and so I would move to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes 19.851C to consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and take any such action if necessary based on its discussion, namely compensation. Is there a second? Second. Motion and second to adjourn into executive session. Any final discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Ms. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Rebholz?
Yes.
Mr. Swiger votes yes. Ms. Justman?
Yes.
Ms. Erickott is absent. Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
And Mr. Ongert?
Yes.
We are adjourned into executive session. Thank you to everyone for watching and for attending tonight. Have a good evening.